Welcome guys to the Glasgow Clubbing Podcast, episode 1. My name is Soban.
My name's Nick.
And we are really pleased to welcome our first guest. Keith obviously is a DJ producer and record label boss and one half of Optimo. So Keith, before we start talking about Optimo and that period within the club night in the sub club, can we just quickly start about talking about your kind of early influences? And
so I grew up in Edinburgh and I lived there till I was 18 and then moved to Glasgow, and I was in all sorts of weird and wonderful music, I guess on the dark side of things, but also into like reggae and electronic music, and then very early on I started going to this club in Edinburgh which was kind of a not goth club, it was a goth club that didn't play any goth music but all the goths went there, and they were auditioning for someone to do the warm-up because no one danced during the warm-up of the nights at first. So my best friend at the time said, let's audition, and I don't want to do this, but he kept on at me, and so we kind of auditioned and we just played 2 hours of music. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I thought the pitch control was the volume on the turntable. Literally, I'd never heard anyone mix. So we just played some records for 2 hours and they liked it. And we got the gig, so we would play 11 till 1 and no one was really dancing at that point, but I discovered that I really enjoyed DJing. And then shortly after that, the people that ran this club were a few years older and they were like into all sorts of music, funk, soul, and then they got into house music right at the very start of it.
What years would these be?
This was like 86, 87. I was going there in 86 and then I played at the club in 87, and then by the end of 87 the two guys started Edinburgh's first house club in this club, Fire Island, gay club on Princes Street.
Yeah. And
I used to go there religiously and was hearing all the first house records, and there wasn't enough house records to really play, so it was interspersed with Italo and High Energy and New Beat. So we decided this was the future. One week we closed the goth club and reopened it under another name, All Day Glow, and just played like acid house. And the original crowd that came that week, and then they never came again. So we but we didn't care. We felt it was time for a change. Yeah. And this was so exciting. And then there was a club in upstairs on a Saturday that played acid house, and we used to go to that religiously. And then
who would have been DJing there?
It was
would it have been Yogi?
I don't think it was Yogi. It was just like some guys who worked in Folk Records,
right.
And they started this club and they called it Acid. And then actually there was all this scandal in the press about acid house, and then 1 week they changed the name to Deep, and then we kind of thought, that's a bit crap, but it motivated us to do something because the club in Fire Island was just really for the gay audience, and we wanted to do something that was open to everyone. So we actually started something in Glasgow in Panama Jack's, which was a club on the riverside down by the Clyde. I don't think it was Colin Bars. I don't know who owned it. It was some shady gangster, and we did a Thursday night in there, and nobody came. You know, we were just too ahead of what was going on, or too out of the scene.
Yeah.
And then so we gave that up, and I thought, I'm going to hang up my headphones. And then I thought, actually, I'm not going to give it one more go. I'm going to so I was at university in Glasgow. I took a year out, started a club in 46 West George Street. And it was called 1992 because 1992 was the year of European integration, and this concept, it was all this music was going to get integrated. Did the first night, posters all around the city. First night rammed, absolutely queued round the second week, nobody there. Like people came and just thought, I don't get it. It was just like it was kind of proto-Optimo, but I didn't really have the skills.
What year would that be then?
That was 88.
I mean, this is all very early.
This is very early.
So you were from Edinburgh and then you moved to Glasgow?
I moved to Glasgow to study when I was 18.
Right, okay.
So when I was, later on when I was doing Pure, I was commuting.
I was going to want to talk about Pure actually, because I'm also...
So that'll come next. So that was a disaster, and then I'd taken this year out of uni and I was like, I've really cocked up, and then I'm really going to hang up my headphones now. And then I was on a train in Edinburgh, and I kind of knew this guy, Ewan, who was a promoter in Edinburgh, and he had this concept to do like a night where a band would play, and then it would be a free entry club afterwards, and it was called UFO.
Yeah.
There was a UFO, and
UFO
weirdly
Glasgow.
coincidence there was
Glasgow.
UFO
Yeah.
in Glasgow, and he put me together with this guy Andy, Brainstorm,
Yeah.
and we did that, and that was kind of a huge success, but also really scary because it was kind of, we were in the Hibs football casual land, and it was the height of casual violence. And the club was kind of okay, but it was ruled by these casuals. Other people could come, but certain people were not welcome.
Because they took over the doors at that time, I
And
believe.
they took over the doors,
Yeah.
and then they basically, this band Paris Angels played
Yes.
one night a couple, and they had a lot of Heart supporters came, and the guy from Paris Angels went, "Fuck the Hibs," and it kicked off. I mean, it was like something out of a gangster, out of a Wild West
Yeah.
brawl. Tables flying, chairs flying. It took like 40 police to come in. They surrounded the dance floor. They carted 2 busloads of people off, and we were like absolutely shitting it.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to die. And the head of Loading Borders Police goes, "You can't do this club anymore. It's over." We were like, "Oh," and then we kind of had a little think about it. Took a few weeks off, and then we came up with this concept of having a members club.
Yeah.
And the club had a basement, and then we thought if people go into the basement, we can control who comes in. And we went back to Loading Borders Police and went, "Can we do this?" And they went, "Well, we'll give you 4 weeks, and if it works, we'll see how it goes."
Yeah.
And actually, that was the best thing that could happen, because
Yeah,
then that was
absolutely.
pure. So we could start again. The UFO had to play like lots of indie stuff.
Yeah.
But we just wanted to start again. We were right there at the right point when techno, house, rave was just kicking off, and we could just play those
So,
records.
so what year would that have been then?
That was 1990.
Wow, man.
Wow, that was right in. I
And we
can
were
imagine.
right in the right place
I
at
mean,
the right time.
Just going back to that, I mean, there is a thing where the violence that surrounded and the kind of stranglehold that was on clubs in Edinburgh effectively killed dance music, apart from pure, in a lot of the clubs for a while.
Well, we were really lucky, because then what happened was all of these casuals started taking ecstasy.
Yeah.
And the same people that had been there a few weeks before kicking the shit out of everyone were all loved up.
All friends.
And there was a transformation, but also we had a different order. We had like students, we had like art school people, we had people coming from Fife, and it was this really mixed crowd of people that would never previously have been in a room together.
Yeah.
And that kind of had a really interesting dynamic, and it was a utopian time.
Yeah.
You thought that the world was going to be changed through taking ecstasy, which of
Certainly
course it wasn't changed, but it was a little bubble.
Yeah.
I mean, no one was drinking. The bar sales on Friday night, we were sold out like 500 people.
What for 500 people then?
Initially, and then it got slightly bigger. But the bar take for like 500 people was something like £300. There was a Saturday metal club on there that had about 50 people that would go in, and it had a bigger bar take than we did. So the owner of the club was, "I can't believe I'm not making any money." And that was when your clubs would turn the taps off, and you could only get whole, which then became illegal.
Yeah.
Just so it was forcing people to buy water.
Really? I didn't realise they did
Inflated prices.
that. Wow. Cool. I mean, Keith, I read something. Did you book Jeff Mills first time?
We put Jeff Mills first
First time in
Europe.
UK? Europe?
Well, he played as Underground Resistance, and then he came. Actually, we booked him, and we had the quietest night we'd had in weeks, because no one knew who he was, and it was always slightly more money if there was a guest. So a lot of people had a negative pool.
Yeah.
But then the second time he played, it was roadblock, because word got out about how amazing he was. With Richie Houghton's first gig.
Wow.
I mean, we were like really obsessed with finding out about music. I was writing at record labels all over the world, trying to make connections. And we had a fax machine, and you had all these fax numbers on record labels, and I would send hundreds of faxes, and then we would kind of have connections with people everywhere. And we were really desperate to be the first people that put everything on. We were just obsessed with this music. And then we had everyone from Chicago you can think of, everyone from Detroit. I mean, the list of people that played is insane. And right from the off, I mean, there wasn't like a 2-week period. It was insane from the beginning.
See, like with some of the DJs that you brought through, like eclectic ones that maybe, maybe like Derek May at the time, that played kind of records like Liquid and things like that into.
That's how I heard Liquid,
Yeah.
which then had a huge impact. I mean, was Derek May playing Liquid? What's that?
Yeah.
What's that? And
So he's playing a record that was made in the early 80s, but in the current, this would have been 10 years later, but mix it into current techno. It must have had an effect.
It did have an effect,
Yeah.
and it just kind of made me realise that definitely helped with what Optimo became, that all music could work on a dance floor. I was sort of an evangelist for electronic music, and then I just became an evangelist for music that you can dance to.
Yeah. And you think that had an effect?
I think so. Obviously I was going to New York, and my sister lived in New York in the early 1990s, and I was going to New York a lot, buying a lot of records there, going to a lot of clubs there.
What clubs did you go to there?
Sound Factory,
Wow.
which was just house music, but it was like the mecca for house music and the best sound system in the world. Junior Vasquez, I remember going there, and he did like a 20-minute mix with this Felix the House Cat record. And I was like, that's amazing. And I ripped the mix off when I got back, and people were booing because they just didn't have the patience for like a 20-minute mix of 2 copies of the same record. And maybe, okay, set and setting is everything here.
Yeah.
How long did Pure last for?
10 years,
10
exactly.
years. Was that if
First 7 years it was every week. Actually, in hindsight, we should have stopped after 7 years. And then, because it kind of dipped, and then we kept it going every second week, and it was still good, but it wasn't as good. And that's what I learned with Optimo, that you should stop it when it's at its absolute peak.
But with Pure as well, I went to some of them, the bigger ones, which were in Barrowlands.
Barrowlands, yeah, 15 nights in the Barrowlands.
The Arches as well. Where maybe was that obviously at the time it was raves, so things were bigger. But was that a way to bring in some, because there was a lot of live music put through that?
So we were really keen to put on live things which we couldn't put on at the club. We had some live stuff like Aphex Twin playing live for 200 quid, and they had all these synths were just in bits on the floor like circuit boards. We were like, how's this going to work? And it did, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
No one knew who he was at that point, so we got him dirt cheap.
So would that have been on Didgeridoo getting released?
Yeah, but not on RNS, but it was out.
When it was before it?
Yeah.
Okay, very early.
Yeah, very early.
That's to pick up that sound as well, because that record, particularly Didgeridoo, and the B-side, which I forget, Bubbles or something. Analog Bubble Bath. But they were very, very starkly different, and the sound was kind of aggressive, sort of challenging sound. So to pick those records up as early as that, even before they were picked up by RNS.
Well, we were just always looking for different sounds, and like that period, 90 to 93, the amount of innovation in the music. It was changing week by week. Absolutely. It was like a musical revolution every 2 weeks. And then now, a lot of the music that's been made now sounds like it's from that point, which I have a slight problem with, that there's not been that. There has been progress, there's all sorts of genres progressing, but house and techno has been kind of moribund for a long time, I feel. It's still great music, but
So see the music played at Pure, so it wasn't just techno, was it? It was acid?
House, techno, acid, hardcore, all sorts,
And was there 2 rooms in it?
So originally there was just one room, and then there was like a basement bar downstairs, and then after a year or 2 that became the cooler, and it was kind of a chill out room.
So the music in that would be chill out, or?
Yeah, or kind of house, or lighter music than upstairs. So what would happen was people would come in, and then they would fill up the cooler, and then they would shout, upstairs, it's open. And everyone run upstairs, so there was no warm up. Literally, it would be like the slam tent where people are running in, and then you'd have like maybe one warm up record, and then you would just go for it. And
brilliant.
Madness.
And what time was it open to?
It was 11 till 4.
Yeah.
It was insane, too insane. Sometimes I remember a certain Detroit DJ was playing And he goes, can you go back? I cannot handle it. It's too intense. It's too intense because just the level of screaming, and at the start, people's whistles, remember whistle posse, and then people just banging everything, like the sub club times 10. But the noise from the crowd was just insane.
Was the booth and the dance floor on the same level, or was it higher up?
Well, it was a rock club, so we were kind of on the side of the stage. but it wasn't really that you were looking at the DJ, it just happened to be... Yeah, and it was insane volume as well, because it was a rock club and the PA was next level great. It must have been the loudest club in the way, more monitors than some clubs have. PA system, and Jeff Mills set the monitors on fire, which I was forever jealous that he managed it.
Wow, impressive.
So after Pure, so you were living in Glasgow whilst doing Pure?
I was living in Glasgow.
People were coming through because it was up.
So that was the other thing which would just not happen. Now, we were running coaches from the west end of Glasgow. We started off running 2 coaches, 100 people would come through from Glasgow to go to Pure for about 2 years, and then it went down to 1 coach, and then it kind of dwindled away. It was a minibus by the end, but for 5 years we were taking busloads of people from Glasgow.
I mean, that's something that's it's not been fully lost, but you know, that was something that did happen. People travelling for clubs en masse.
But you wouldn't have got people,
but not on a weekly basis.
Not from Glasgow to Edinburgh, because Glasgow was always one step ahead. But we were just doing something, it was kind of its own thing, and it was a little bit unique, and there wasn't really anything. I mean, there was things UFO was comparable, but just the kind of the audience we had, which was kind of so diverse and also weird, but like kind of mental, and then weird people, gay people. Nowhere else had that, so that was kind of why people wanted to come.
Was that not, was that in Glasgow that time then?
I mean, obviously you had great clubs in Glasgow, but I think Pure just was slightly out there on its own musically, and then I mean at that time Slam were playing Italian house pretty much.
Yeah.
And
was
then
Atlantis on it?
Atlantis, and then I mean they then went full techno, but in 91, 92 they were not playing techno. I guess techno clubs in Glasgow were maybe a bit neddy, a bit scary for some people. We had a scheming audience, but we also had a middle class audience. So it was a real mix of melting pot of people.
Interesting. So when that stopped, you were already living in Glasgow, Keith, weren't you, at that time?
I was, yeah.
So you were going.
I would get the bus. I was running the coach, and I would take the coach.
Back on the coach,
yeah.
3-4.
And then I never drove, so I would just wing it and hope someone would. There was always people driving through, and I would always just wing it and get a lift back.
Keith, see, because you just talked about driving there, just on a kind of side note, I remember you once told me, right, that you went for your driving test when in Green Hill, right?
Yeah, I failed the test because it was like an army guy.
An army guy.
It was like, didn't like it.
And that was the last time you attempted?
I've never tested it.
Right, so see when that stopped, right, did you know Jonnie?
Well, I did.
At that point?
So, about 7 years into Pure, I think we made a mistake. We just booked all the audience just wanted it harder, faster. And I wasn't really into that, and just went along with it because I didn't know what else to do. But I was listening to all sorts of other music at the time, and I was DJing on a Sunday night it was called Aquaplanet, and it was just a guy called Mark Ryle, and it was his club in the sub club, and it was kind of like very deep techno and house, and then he'd have me play one week and Dominic play another week.
I remember, because I went to one of them, and I can remember because it stood out. You played a Front 242 record at it, and it stood out basically from what was happening then, because I thought just on the build up to Optimo starting, I thought clubbing in Glasgow had got quite, it was maybe taking you on a journey kind of thing.
Yes,
very smooth,
very much so.
Things like that,
Very much so, and I wanted something a bit more punk rock. So the best thing that could have happened was they went on holiday to Barcelona, came back and Paul, the other guy that ran it with Mark, we're moving to Barcelona. And I was like, okay. And then Tony McCrimmon, who ran the sub club, he goes, I think you could do something really interesting here. And full credit to the sub club, they had every faith that this was going to be.
Was this a Sunday night?
Sunday night.
Right.
So it says, and I was going to do it just on my own, and then I was going to have various local DJs play every week. And the first one I asked was Jonnie. I didn't really know him very well. I kind of knew him a little bit. We'd done a few collaborations. He was doing the art school, and we'd done
Machines. He would have been doing.
He was doing Knucklehead and then My Machines, and we'd done a couple of pure collaborations with him. So I kind of knew him and knew I'd got on. And he played the first night, and I just thought, this works brilliantly. This is it. And then that was kind of locked in.
So if you hadn't asked him to do that first
who
night,
knows what would happen? Yeah.
So was there? I take it there wasn't anything on a Sunday at that moment, was there? Like, was it a free day every weekend?
Well, that's what I was saying. That was like this club Aquaplanet had just closed because they'd moved to Barcelona.
Oh, right. So they were doing the Sunday. Sorry.
Yes, they were doing the Sunday, and we started doing it, and we had no expectation, and we started off, and for about a year and a half, it was maybe 100 people.
Yeah.
Sub club had every belief in it. We didn't believe in it, and 100 people was fine for us because we were able to play all this crazy music.
It was incredibly forward thinking for the sub club to actually realise that.
It absolutely was.
Because I mean, I didn't go at the very start. I was told about it, and we eventually went. I think it maybe started in November.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think the first one we went to was maybe in April the following year, and it just blew my mind. And everybody I was with, and we kind of ended up going because it was just so refreshing. But there wasn't many people there. I mean,
I mean, the first night, Mike Grieve got on the mic at the end of the night. He went, "This is going to be epic. This is going to be one for the history books." And we were like, Jonnie and I were going, "All right, Mike, calm down, calm down."
So see, before doing that, then on that Sunday, were you? Please excuse the term, right? But obviously, you're always kind of seen as being kind of having eclectic music, right? And like, I know you don't like that term, but like, were you playing that kind of mix of music in the previous nights you were doing, or was it just a new concept?
I guess I was trying to play as broad a range of electronic music as I could, and that was the thing. I think earlier on I was so excited with all the way the music was developing, I was just playing within that genre, and then later on when Pure was kind of focused on that kind of Jeff Mills loopy techno, I was really frustrated because I would try and play stuff and it just wouldn't land.
So were folk just wanting like the same kind of...
They were, and it could become more masculine, the audience. It used to be a very mixed crowd, more heterosexual, and just people just wanted this...
Kind of stale?
I mean, it kind of got stale. I mean, it was partly my fault. No one was forcing me to play that music, but I just thought, this is the end of my DJ career. I'm bored. And then I'd been going to New York, I'd been listening to all sorts of other music. I liked all this different music before I started Pure, and I thought there must be a way to play all this. And it's a Sunday night, and I felt a Sunday night is an ideal night to do it because surely people after the weekend are maybe more open.
People like I mean, what noticed me with it was slightly older. I mean, at that time we were all in our 20s, but it was just a wee bit. And there was older people in it, do you know what I mean, like in their 30s and 40s that went to it. And it was a mix of musicians,
yes,
a lot of hospitality people as well.
Very much,
you know,
a lot of art school people because Jonnie was at the art school. A lot of people hated it. I mean, people would come down and get really, really angry.
Yeah.
How can you play? This is a sub club. This is a temple of house music. How can you play the Stooges in here? And would want to hit me. And it was like, wow, we must be doing something right if we're really getting people that annoyed about it.
Yeah.
And see from the start, Keith. So I take it. So you obviously the first hour you'd play like stuff that didn't have.
Yeah, so the idea was that it was a social club as well, and that people would come down the first hour, like, because not many people were coming, we had tables and chairs on the back bit of the dance floor, so people would come in, chat, and we'd keep the music low and not play music that you could dance to, so that people could chat and get to know each other. And then at midnight we would have maybe a local band play, and that was all we could afford for half an hour, and then it would become Optimo. And actually that was a really good thing because the community of the club really got a chance to develop because all these different people who had never met before were able to have conversations and then go off to create projects. All these bands sprung out of that. You had people from the band scene who had never been in a club before, and then you had people in the club scene who'd never seen bands before. Because
Ferdinand, I mean, I remember them being there. Like,
they were hanging out there,
like,
yes.
You know.
Was there any other types of clubs doing that kind of thing? Where there's also a crossover that you kind of helped create, you know, like. I
mean, not in Glasgow, I don't think so.
There'd been, I mean, not like that, but there'd been maybe like the Chemical Brother, when they were the Dust Brothers at Heavenly Social.
Yes, elsewhere in the country, yes, you know, for sure. Yeah.
Justin Robertson doing Most Excellent in Manchester. They were eclectic clubs, you know, but I wouldn't say as eclectic as Optimo was. That was on a next level, you know.
I'd actually say, to give him his credit, David Holmes was a big influence because we booked him to play at Pure and he was slightly ahead of me in being fed up with techno, and we booked him to play when it was everyone that was going to the club was only in techno, and he played the Stooges, and I just thought this sounded it's so exciting in a nightclub to hear that music, and I kind of like stage dived off the stage and was like, this is inspiring. And then that kind of opened up in my head that you can play this stuff. If it sounds good, it's going to work, and you'll turn people off, but you'll turn the right people on.
Because you had him quite early on.
Yeah, so when we first started the club, we had a few guest DJs, and then we would say to them, "You can play whatever you want," but they genuinely didn't. So we stopped booking guest DJs and just put back. David Holmes was one of the ones. Yeah, and it got busier. Yes.
I think that's the thing. We'll see, because you didn't book DJs and you just used it the night, right? You were able to kind of therefore create and build quite a stamp and a sound.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we would have bands on, and quite often people would be like, didn't really care about the band, but we were determined we were going to introduce people to this music. All these crazy bands were happening.
Shakes on
Speed. That was the night where Optimo really took off.
When was that after starting?
It was about a year and a half in, and then we'd done it. No one really knew who Chicks on Speed were, but we'd done this massive hype and got people really excited. And at one point, there was a queue to get in the club, and there was a queue to get out the club. They were so awful. But I think at that point, a light bulb kind of went off in the collective consciousness, and then from that week on, we'd be like 100, 120 people. If it was a bank holiday, we'd maybe get 200 people. And then Chicks on Speed, there was 500 people, and then it's 500 people for the next 10 years. Yeah. It was just like something clicked in Glasgow.
I kind of read, so is it true that obviously the sub-club had to shut for a couple of years, right?
Yes.
I can't recall, how long was it?
It was 2 years.
2 years, 2 years. And was it not on the night that you were supposed to be doing a night?
It was on a Sunday night, and we were outside the club, and the post office next door was on fire, and I was speaking to the chief of the fire brigade, he goes, "Oh, you might have to open at 1 o'clock tonight rather than midnight," and then it just went boom. It's like, oh, I think you might be out for a few weeks, and then it was a couple of years. That was also the making of Optimo, because the Saturday night really struggled because the audience didn't like it being in different places, and we were in, you remember Planet Peach?
Well, I was just thinking, I was trying to remember the name of it. Remember, you did the place down at the Clydeside for a couple of weeks.
For a couple of weeks, the 13th note, the original 13th note, and then that was kind of chaotic, and then the sub club found this club, the Planet Peach.
Royal Exchange?
No, it was bottom of Queen Street, right down on the other side of the road from La Chita at the bottom, and it was a basement club.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I don't know if it's still there. Is it still there?
I think it's still there, but it's certainly a mainstream club now, I would think.
And it kind of
it's a restaurant.
It's a restaurant.
I'm pretty sure it's a restaurant.
And it had all these different areas, and it had like a giant peach on the dance floor. It was so tacky, but it somehow worked.
It really did work.
It really did. And then the energy of the club went to the next level when we were in there.
I don't think the bouncers knew quite what to do, because I remember they were playing Man to Man meets Man Paris, the Wales stripper, and everybody was up each other's shoulders, and I didn't know how to deal with it, kind of thing, you know, because everyone was cool, you know, but they got it quite quickly as well, you know, that the crowd were cool, you know.
They did, and then the sub club then wanted to move to Mass, which was in Royal Exchange Square, which
Right, that's what, yeah.
we didn't really want to move there, but we
What
did.
was Mass like then?
It was like you had two rooms. There was a bar room, and then there was a long passageway, and then there was a long room, a bit like the sub club, but with a higher ceiling. And it was a little bit too nice for us to be there.
Too polished?
But we went along with it because we were tied to the sub club. I think we would have been better staying where we were. But actually that worked really well as well. And it gave it another boost of energy because it was another new place.
Did you think you'd go back to the sub club then?
I mean, at that time it just felt like this is going on so long.
Like COVID or something like that, you know? Like
You didn't know. And then finally the sub club did reopen. And then I remember the last night we didn't really like being in Mass. So we want to get out. We got to get out of this place. And the place went electric, and then we moved back to the sub club, and it was a bit weird at first being back in.
So obviously it's been refurbished.
It's been refurbished, but everyone had been used to it.
Was the booth was at the speaker wall? Was it? Am I getting that wrong? Was the booth at the speaker wall, and was it moved?
It was in a similar place, but the whole back of the club was now open, and I think people were a bit uncomfortable because they were so used to the sub club being kind of scummy and scabby.
Was there not a carpet?
There was filthy carpet with 20 years worth of puke and cigarette burns and.
Oh, because you still
Anyway, within a few weeks, it was like we'd always been there, and then it kind of carried on as before, and it went on for. I mean, we were there for. That open, when did the sub club reopen? 2001.
If I've got that right.
So we were there another 11 years after that.
And see, obviously, you were so famed for your spooky nights. Was that something that you did from the start?
No, it was just Optimo happened to be on Halloween, and we weren't really planning to do anything. And everyone turned up in fully dressed, fancy dress.
Right.
And then someone else came up with a name. Oh, you should call this a Spookio. And so the next year and it just became a thing.
What was the first Spookio? What was the design?
Well, there wasn't a design because it was just like people decided themselves that there was going to be a Spookio, and then
people spoke then for you.
And then we kind of got really into mad production, and then
taking it to the art school.
No, we didn't. We always did a spooky only in the sub club. It was Hogmanay. We did it art, so we started in big Hogmanay parties every year.
I wasn't at this one, but the Armageddon night when did you not fill the sub club full of?
So we did Optimo Geddon, which was based on Apocalypse Now, and then we got like all the door staff were dressed up as GIs, and then we had all actors acting as dead soldiers in the club. And we had like half of Kelvin Grove Park in there, all this bush fireworks and stuff, and like massive explosives tanks, pyrotechnics, with which you had to have a professional person to run. And then we had a smoke machine coming out the front door, so when you came in it was like crazy. And then there were these bangs throughout the night that shook the whole club. And I remember there was a guy from Manchester that goes, is it like this every week? And I'm like, and then other people be, why are you doing this? Why? Because it's fun, And that was the thing. Optimo was serious about music, but it was a fun club. And clubbing doesn't have to be. You can be deadly serious about music, but having a good time in a club should be about having fun and not taking it all too seriously.
I recall I went to the one that you had the big spider. Remember that one? Was it not a big spider you had, or was it UV?
I don't know. My memories.
Was it like spiders?
So many nights, so bad.
Was on that one, and there was like UV cannons with like spiders' webs. And
no doubt. Yeah, that was probably in a spooky night. But it kind of blurs into one. I mean, we did 570 nights or something. And I mean, God knows how Harry remembers any of the Saturday nights. He's done like well over 1,000, I guess. So.
Wow. I remember we'd come to a few Spookios. I was just kind of coming of age, and like I think what I loved about what he did was the music was just so curated.
Absolutely. So it'd be 100%. We'd have all these records that we would only play at Halloween, and actually by the end of it, I never wanted to hear any of them again.
Yeah.
And we kept getting asked to do a Spook Heroes again and again. We said no, because I just burned out on hearing those records. And we finally did one again last year at the Riverside. And actually I was like, okay, I'm ready to play these records again.
So I mean, I think the thing that you maybe, like, there was definitely, you managed to get the sort of younger crowd, the sort of arty crowd, music crowd coming through to Optimo, do you know what I mean? Then, as people do, they party for a few years, and then they go and a new one replaces
and
it.
that never ceased to amaze me that we kept getting, because you get some clubs, a brief period, they've like a whole run of people being at university and then they disappear.
Yeah.
And we kept getting a refill. You had some people that came right the way through, but not very many.
Yeah, they wouldn't have had many jobs in that day, that's for sure.
I mean, speaking of that, then obviously there was, Optimo was known for having like a kind of community or a crowd. Now, see, because you're doing that every week, that obviously helped build that, didn't it? Obviously, and would you go out afterwards on a Sunday, and what was?
I went out every Sunday for 12 and a half years.
Yeah.
I don't think there was maybe once I had the flu and I didn't go to an after party, but I never got home to bed till like lunchtime.
After parties were legendary.
They were legendary. I mean, Optimo was kind of the aperitif to the after party.
Yeah. And were it all flats, or was it another venue?
No, it was all in people's flats.
I mean, you could name them off, but there was like the ones in West Princes Street went on for days.
Finally, that's probably the main reason why we had to stop it, for our own sake, and also when we did stop it, suddenly lots of people got their lives together. I mean, 10 people I knew moved to London within a week. It's like we've been holding them back and they couldn't do anything.
Was there moments when you felt like it was just getting a bit too much for you?
Well, it was because we were starting to tour a lot and we were going every DJing Friday, Saturday in Europe. And I think the weirdest one was we'd done Saturday night in Japan.
You had to get back to Optimo.
I left the club at like 8 in the morning to go to the airport and got back, and I came straight from Glasgow airport.
Oh.
And I was like, this is going to kill me. Literally. I was like smoking 40 a day. I was totally unhealthy, so this is going to a short lifespan. Yeah.
See, about the music. So you obviously use Ableton. And you've used it since the start, right?
Since the start.
When was the start of
2001, yeah.
And do you think having Ableton to use when you're DJing changed how you can...
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of developed my own signature. So I use Ableton and vinyl.
Yeah.
I don't use CDJs, and I kind of go between them. But I can do all sorts of crazy things that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Right through the 90s when I was doing Pure, I would kind of imagine what I'd like to be able to do if I could use 5 turntables, and I just wasn't technically capable of using 3 turntables. So Ableton allowed me to be very creative, also very self-indulgent as well, I guess, but also you could make things hits that were definitely not conventional dance floor records.
The other things.
Yes, and then just letting them go, and then people would carry on dance. But Optimo also had some very weird club hits.
Like, well, the Rock Cottage as a rock record, but the edit that you made of it turned it into
exactly
a proper, and it extended everything as well.
Yeah, and then records like there's a song called Everybody's Gotta Live by Arthur Lee, and it's just him on an acoustic guitar. But this is the benefits of doing a weekly club. I remember the first time I played it and everyone was just like, what's that? And then cleared the dance floor, and I played it the next week, same thing happened. Played it the third week, and then on the way out I heard people starting to sing it. It was getting stuck in their heads. 4th week, people were getting really into it. 5th week, people were asking for it. 6th week, people were going mad for it. But you couldn't do that unless you were doing a weekly club. Yeah. I would never have been able to break that as a hit record in the club.
Yeah, I mean, there's something on that, Ron Hardy, when he was first handed the first acid tapes by DJ Pierre, he played it
3 or 4 times.
Yeah. Cleared the dance floor, but if he hadn't been able to have that, the capability to do that over, you know, a night or a period of weeks, it couldn't have expanded, you know.
And there's also a two-way trust thing. I'm like quite arrogant because I know this crowd inside out, and then they're also quite forgiving because they know if I'm going to throw a curveball, there's a reason, or at least it's going to get back to something they can dance to in the next thing. So it's a symbiotic relationship. I was a lot more daring as a DJ then than I am. I think I'm still quite daring as a DJ, but it's harder when you're just playing somewhere, a one-time gig.
I mean, you obviously do the Bertie Suite now, you know. Every month you do it.
Yes, so the same thing is. I mean, it's harder to maybe break a really good record, but I feel a lot more freedom there than most places. We have a residency in London. I feel a lot more freedom there. A lot of places we play a lot of festival gigs. You just have to play quite straight ahead in our own style still. So we still have a style of playing, but not going to perhaps drop. Well, sometimes I do actually. I'll play, right, Jonnie, well, this is going to go one or two ways, and I'll drop some crazy record. And 9 times out of 10, actually, people do go for it because people are more open-minded than I think they're given credit for.
Did you miss the weekly?
No.
That's a quick answer.
Occasionally, wouldn't that be nice? And I go, no, absolutely.
So, were you getting gigs more abroad for what period when you started doing Optimo? I mean,
so like 2003, we did a mix CD for this French label called Kill the DJ, and then things kind of just went. And then from then on, it was pretty much every
7 years of kind of weekend and then come back for it. And you must have been exhausted, man.
Yeah, but also I was younger then, so I.
Yeah.
And you had like James Murphy and such, like LCD sound system coming down. I mean, that was very early.
Well, we played the Rapture, and James Murphy was like the sound guy, and he goes, "Oh, here's my record. You might like this."
Really?
He gave us "Losing My Edge," and we were like, "Wow!" It was like a test press. Losing My Edge, and we go, "Did you do this live?" And go, "No, I do." And then we did the first British LCD gig as well.
Did you?
They did one gig in London and then did a gig in Glasgow, and then we've been great friends with him ever since.
And they're always complimentary, you know, whenever they play in Glasgow, they always, give you a shout out. So see, coming towards the end of the weekly, had you thought about it for a while then?
I basically dropped the bombshell on Jonnie when we were in Australia. I go, "Jonnie, we need to stop this." For one, I could sense that there was no way except down. I mean, it was still absolutely maximum.
It's quite hard to stop something when it's on a high.
I learned a lesson from not doing it. And I think Jonnie was like devastated initially. And then I think I sold the idea to him, well, we'll have lots more time to do other projects. I wanted to start a label. Didn't have time. Our whole lives were tied up in organising Optimo because it was an enormous amount of work. Musically making it fresh every week.
You were doing it all.
We were doing everything. We were doing the PR, we were doing the posters. Jonnie was doing the posters. I was doing the booking of all the live acts. I literally had no life apart from that. And so we announced 8 weeks out that we're going to end the club so that people would have a chance to and people came from all over the world.
I just had one last
Optimo, and then there was kind of a countdown, and it got more and more intense. And then we did the final Optimo-geddon, which we didn't call it Optimo-geddon, someone else gave it that name. It was
what was it like that last night, Keith?
I mean, I can't really remember it because it's so emotional, and also with all these people that you suddenly realise you're never going to see them again because your whole relationship with them was based around. And you felt these people were really good friends, and they were, but the slots I never saw again since that night. So lots of tears, and then I think that was about a 3-day after party.
So I mean, one of the things which you touched on there was obviously Jonnie doing the posters, and
so Jonnie, being a great artist in his own right, has always done all the Optimo artwork and has developed a very unique.
It was certainly unique.
It was,
but going again, when you started to, you know, like ones that I could remember, like Optimo Says, like, you know, the slogans, and obviously you were never scared of challenging things, norms and such, like, you know, or just going out for being on the right side of history, I guess, like, you know.
And we were also very political always. We were doing fundraisers going way back for various causes that we felt were important, and that helped build a community around it. I would say a lot of people that came to the club were maybe from the left of the political spectrum. We're avowedly anti-fascist, and that's deeply rooted in our philosophy. We don't like shout about it too much. I don't like to ram things down people's throats, but it's core to who we are,
of course,
as it is to you as well.
I feel like there, I don't know. There just doesn't seem to be like much of that much with kind of things these days. It's like, do you think?
Well, also, everything now is we existed out with social media.
There wasn't social media.
Yeah.
At the start, there was no social media, and then early on, we had a website and we had a bulletin board. Actually, we had a very active bulletin board where people were posting it, and that was a huge part of the community. But we didn't have social media until very towards the end of Optimo, really, and then that was it. So we promoted it in a different way. We promoted it word of mouth, posters, flyers, with some of them around pubs flying. It's a totally different way. I think when you're in the eye of social media, you've got to be a bit more careful with. We didn't give a fuck. We were like punk. But we could afford to be. There wasn't anyone was going to cancel us.
Effectively, it obviously was underground then, wasn't it? I mean,
because it wasn't underground.
Yeah.
Because you had to be. There was
and if you weren't interested in it, there was one way of, you just would never go. But there wasn't a way of to kind of like call out something, do you know what I mean? Whereas these days, if you post something, it's open to the public, and people can, from
I mean, there was the slam board at the time, which was full of Optimo haters. Slam board was hysterical. I used to be an absolute, but they would give Optimo pelters on there.
Yeah.
So,
Not
slam, I hasten to add.
No.
Interesting. I think we could maybe talk about then therefore, because how long? Was 1987, so we're talking about 28.
So we've been stopped as long as we went. As the club existed, we've had another 12 and a half years of managing to make a success of DJing, which I think is quite incredible, really. And then we've got a very successful night in the Berkeley Suite, and it's a super young audience. I mean, last time we did it, there was like a guy having his 70th birthday party, but then there was this 18-year-old having her birthday party. So it's a multi-generational club, but it definitely skews younger, and we're like, where did that come from? How
see, that's the thing, because it's also endured, right? It's like I've got friends who were kind of like in bands and whatnot, right, when we were kind of younger, and they've come to Optimo, right, and even now, if there's like, the spooky happening or something like that on New Year's Eve, they will want to go,
Going to the early Optimos, what stands out in your mind is when you dropped these records that kind of just changed the way you thought about music, or you were hearing records that shouldn't have been played in a club, or you wouldn't have thought, and everyone's dancing. But then at the same time, it was forward thinking house and techno that were getting played as well, I mean,
absolutely. So we didn't stick in one zone, or we're not stuck in history only playing 90s records. We played brand new records as well, and brand new genres, and it has to be interesting for me, or else
absolutely
I couldn't do it.
But therefore, then that can be a younger generation that connects to them as well, because it's a forward-thinking club,
But also, I guess sometimes I see like nights like you do, and all the people I know are going to that, and they don't really come anymore because the crowd's so young.
Totally.
But also, I think a lot of people don't want to go out club hours.
It's late.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, recently there's been a big kind of push to have like these kind of early day things. I mean, we had Mr. Scruff playing 6 till midnight.
Right.
A couple weeks ago, we had John Digweed playing, 7 till 12 in the last Sunday in the sub club. So there seems to be kind of a whole kind of put.
There's a number of things for it. I mean, the cost of taxis, just for instance, if you miss the last train, you could be ending up, God knows, but like 40-50 quid is not.
Yeah.
And if you, that's just unaffordable for some people, So I mean, I think that has an effect, but there maybe has been a bit of a change since COVID, you know.
I think definitely. I mean, I think if something later in the year we're going to experiment with doing a daytime thing and seeing whether we get that older audience comes to that, because it's for example when we do Queen's Park, it's all the older people and the younger
Queen's
audience.
Park's great. I mean,
They don't come back because they probably can't afford it or whatever. So
would you do it indoors or outdoors, or would you?
I think indoors we'll do it just to see if it works. I like the idea of having this club that has two different crowds. You've got a really young. I mean, some older people come on the Berkeley Suite, but it's not primarily a younger crowd. And then do a daytime part. Maybe musically it's slightly different.
Yeah.
How do you think if the scenes? So in Glasgow, how do you think the scene's changed in your perspective from when you kind of first started doing Optimo and perhaps those years? Do you think? I mean, do you think people are going out less then? Therefore, people. I mean, there seems to be more nights than ever.
I mean, I don't know whether less people are going out. I'm not going out very much, so it's hard for me to tell. I think the number of clubs with longevity is obviously not the same because of how you promote it, because of social media, because of people's dedication. I think the club scene is very, very healthy. There's lots of great, amazing nights. There's lots of more diversity in nights than there's ever been. I think the Glasgow scene's great. I don't know whether I constantly hear people saying, "Oh, no one's going out anymore, it's dead." Those tend to be older people.
Yeah.
I think younger people are going out. Maybe not the same. I think what's happening is your garage type of clubs. Their days are numbered because they were all about pooling. You don't need to go to a club to pool. People maybe aren't drinking as much. I used to go to the garage every so often just for late night carnage.
I think people do have less money these days because there's definitely a decrease in a regular. People are going out every single. I mean, you go out
every week.
Yeah, and
like 2-3
times
a week.
It was relatively cheap. I mean, now with the price rises, costs of drinks are expensive. There has to be rises on the door and such like as well. You know.
I mean, we used to be £2 to get it. I mean, with a special like Optimo card. I mean, which £2 now is about £8. Yeah. But it was still cheap.
Yeah.
And I was very poor. I didn't make any money DJing really until about 2000. So I went out the whole 1990s was 3 times a week, but was dirt poor. I mean, I don't know how I afforded to buy records.
I think once you're in that kind of tornado of things, you just somehow you live within it somehow, and you just end up not having money, but you seem to be out 3 times a week.
Yeah, exactly. I think also people go to lots more big events, so they maybe pick their battles. Yeah. And they'll go to like a few festivals a year. I mean, when I first started teaching, I played 1 festival a year. Now, 80% of my yearly gigs are festivals, so there's been a huge change in that.
There's, I guess, like, you know, dance music can go where dance music becomes predominant, and then guitar music becomes sort of predominant. I mean, with a younger generation, but what Optimo seemed to do to me was bridge a gap between the two of them.
Definitely, yeah.
So it was the cool sort of indie crowd, and there was a dance music crowd as well that went as well, and that was a kind of. So I guess that kind of, you're not tied to a specific genre.
Well, and I can't get over the number of times people told me this over the years. Well, I didn't think I liked dance music until I came to Optimo.
Absolutely.
And we did play dance music. I mean, what's dance music? But the way we played it introduced people that didn't like it and made it accessible for them.
Well, look, Keith, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it, and it's clear that we could have went for hours there.
We certainly could have.
So, yeah, thank you so much. That's it.
All right.
That was brilliant.